In 2015 and 2017, two of the best indie games of the last decade came out. Those being Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest. Those games are getting sequels in 2020, one of those, Ori's sequel, being out when this video comes out. I think now is a good time to actually compare the first two games and see which game is better. Now of course this channel focuses on Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong, so I do come from a slight place of bias, you could say, since Hollow Knight is one of my favorite games and I only played Ori and the Blind Forest very recently. If you want to not spoil yourself on either one of those games, both of these games are great, I'm going to say that right away. Both of these games are somewhat Game of the Year contenders of the year they were released in. Both of these games are exceptionally great and wonderful, so since I'm going to go and compare these games in 5 different categories, you can't really say that just because the one game is better in one category than the other game is bad in that category. It's mostly just that the other game is good or great, while the one who wins the category exceeds at it. With that said, the 5 categories are going to be story, music, visuals, gameplay, and exploration / metroidvania style stuff, and practically everything I can fit into the last part. I'm going to give 1 point for each round and half points if I think both games are equally good. And yeah, we're going to begin with the story. Ori and the Blind Forest is a much more focused game. It takes you through the game not by the hand, but it gives you waypoints on where to go next and has a set progression path. You can of course explore the world around you at your own leisure, but you won't be able to get any story sequences in a way which isn't intended, apart from of course glitching the game. So yeah, the game has these gameplay sections, and after a while, at certain waypoints you get a story section with somewhat cutscenes or playable cutscenes, and those are really touching. The story itself isn't that new, it isn't that deep, but the way it is set up does really touch you, especially in the beginning, and towards the middle and end it really gets tough to watch sometimes because it really excels at it. Most of it is story based and not lore based, so this is maybe the drawback that I have with the storytelling of Ori and the Blind Forest, is that pretty much everything you see is quite on the nose and there isn't that much hidden in the world. Not storytelling via the world, but rather via cutscenes, which is, of course, it is great, but we are now going to go into Hollow Knight and discuss the polar opposite of it. Because Hollow Knight also has cutscenes, but these, apart from 1 or 2 endings, they don't have the emotional impact. They are not designed in a way to make you instantly get what's going on. This game, Hollow Knight, is much more mysterious, but I think that plays in its favor, because I do think Hollow Knight is on first sight too mysterious, but once you dig deeper and actually read through all of the stuff you get, because it is so much more lore based, there's a lot just more to grasp, more to get out of it. There's so many item descriptions and enemy descriptions and dialogue you can dissect, and I really love it. I really love doing that. I can always compare Hollow Knight to kind of a story-wise to a Dark Souls, Bloodborne-ish approach, if you do know what I'm trying to say. And it's hard for me to actually say which one does it better, but since Ori's story is great, it's really good, but it's a bit by the numbers when it comes to depth, and Hollow Knight's story is anything but by the numbers. It's really unique in a way, It has really unique passages, really unique secrets, and it has really much of it, but nothing really seems tagged on. So while Ori does have a great story, this point is going to go to Hollow Knight. Although it's quite a close call, so I would understand if you would switch it around. It really depends on what you like more. But yeah, Hollow Knight takes the victory in that round and leads 1-0. Next up, I think, what did I say? Music. I said music. This is, again, the whole games kind of play out like this. Hollow Knight is less on the nose, it's more subtle, and Ori, on the nose sounds negative. No, Ori is more scenic, while Hollow Knight is more atmospheric, if you get what I'm trying to say. And when it comes to the music, it's also quite hard to compare the two, because both of those games have excellent soundtracks. When the game first came out, I played a bit of it, but then I stopped because I didn't have time or something. But what really stuck with me were the visuals, which we are going to talk about later, and the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is just so good, it fits so well. Each track, down that many tracks, is so well composed and so fitting that it really makes you feel like you're in this world. And Hollow Knight also achieves this, but with a different kind of style. Hollow Knight, while it does have really also excellent tracks, especially in boss battles, some of its overworld themes are actually just atmospheric. So they are not really melodies, but rather sounds. The average track quality of Ori and the Blind Forest might be a little bit higher. Hollow Knight's sound design is definitely better, because it really, there's so many sound effects in this game, and this is another category where both of them really exceed. Now we're going to go into visuals, and this is another category where they are really close, really close. Hollow Knight's visuals are a bit more, I don't want to say simple, but definitely more readable. They are more functional in a way. They are made with the gameplay in mind, and the game is very pretty. There are some sections of the game, some areas of the game which are really beautiful, but it's more of like an ensemble of everything the game has to offer rather than the visuals alone. Because if we compare the visuals from Hollow Knight to Ori, Hollow Knight's visuals work great in an ensemble sense, as one piece of the whole, but as a standalone thing, as a standalone category, I think Ori's visuals maybe work a bit better. This is another thing where I have to try to disconnect from my emotional connection to Hollow Knight and try to think of it objectively, and I think Ori is, objectively speaking, the prettier game, because it's just so beautiful, and Hollow Knight is also so beautiful, but maybe just a tad less. Hollow Knight's visuals are a big plus, but Ori's visuals are a bigger plus. You know what I'm saying? Because Ori's visuals are just so detailed. The only drawback is that it isn't readable enough, that the environments kind of blend together sometimes, and hitboxes become a bit more unreadable, and this makes it harder for the gameplay. For the visuals alone, Ori takes the point, and now we're at 1.5 to 1.5, and we've got 2 categories remaining. The 4th category is gameplay. This is the only category where I can really say that we have a clear winner. So let's first start with Ori and the Blind Forest. In Ori, you have some great movement options. Like, for example, I think the best thing about Ori's gameplay is by far the dash, which is kind of an dash that lets you slow down time and dash when you're near objects or enemies, and dash off of those. and I think this is really great. And Ori also has a skill tree, which really helps you for exploration, which we're going to get into in the last topic. But there are also like some movement upgrades, some damage upgrades, and the skill tree really unfolds in a way which is really nice, I think. When we're going to talk about movement in Ori, we also have to talk about the floatiness of it, because Ori does control a bit floaty, and if you pair that together with the visual style, it does become a problem sometimes. It still has great movement. It's not like I dislike the movement. But there were instances where I thought, okay, this is just too momentum based for me, while Hollow Knight is more stiff and more like, okay, you press this button this long and you jump this high, and it's really about precision, while Ori is more about feeling and momentum, and it isn't that clear to make the same jump 2 times in the same way. And I really like that, to be able to really know how I'm going to play, especially in combat sequences where Hollow Knight gets a lot more intense than Ori, because Ori is a bit more platforming based than Hollow Knight. And in Hollow Knight, when you get the combat sequences, you just have to have exact control about your player character, and you do. If we talk about combat in the gameplay section, I just have to say that Ori, this is the only thing where Ori really falls short. The only con I have of this entire game is that the combat is bad. It's not really fun. It's bashing a button and getting the results. You get 1 or 2 moves which can also damage enemies later on, but it's not as effective most of the time than just bashing the button. And yeah, this is kind of a bummer, because Ori is really great in other parts, but not in the combat section. And this is something they changed in the second game, Will of the Wisps, which came out just a few days ago, probably, if you're going to watch this video. It's clear why they changed it, because it wasn't good in and wasn't good in the original Ori and the Blind Forest. It just felt a bit mediocre, which again, it isn't like an awful thing. It isn't, if I say something is mediocre, it's just like a 5 out of 10. It's improvable. This is why the category is a clear win for Hollow Knight, because Hollow Knight's gameplay is much more refined. I think the platforming sections are great in both games. The platforming sections do also really work well in Ori, even though it's floaty. And in Hollow Knight, with the precision, it does also work really well, in my opinion. But the combat against non-playable characters, against other bugs or other blobs, if we're talking about Ori, Hollow Knight just has a much greater advantage, I think. And there are also charms which you can collect in Hollow Knight, and so many other moves you can learn, that it's just really not comparable. I'm not going to go into the depths of everything you can learn in Hollow Knight, because the sheer quantity of it is insane. It really is insane. And those charms you can equip also have charm combinations, so if you equip 2 at once, they might interact with each other in a way which gets you another charm effect, which is really interesting, I think. And yeah, movement and combat and everything gameplay related just feels better in Hollow Knight, so that's why it gets the point and leads 2.5 to 1.5. And now we're at our last category, which is exploration / metroidvania style world building / everything I haven't mentioned so far. So this is another example, just like the first 2 categories, where Ori is much more linear in a way and is much more clear, while Hollow Knight is much more mysterious in a way and not telling you what to do, but rather giving you subtle hints. This really comes down to preference in a way, at least until a certain point, which I'm going to talk about later. But if you want a Metroidvania experience which is much more guided, then Ori is the game for you. But if you want a Metroidvania experience where you are the one in control and you decide when to do what, then Hollow Knight is the game for you. Ori has an interesting world, don't get me wrong. It doesn't utilize the exploration as much as Hollow Knight does. There are some nice points in the game where you do something in a dungeon and it actually has an effect on the entire world around you, which is really nice. Especially I remember after the second dungeon, there are changes made which really make the flow of the game much faster, much nicer, and is really, really nice. And Ori also has these passages which are optional, which you can tackle at almost any point, I think. And this is also these are quite small, but they are very welcome because the game is kind of short. So these two extra areas were actually really nice. If we're going to talk about Hollow Knight's exploration, it's again, if you want a much more linear experience, Hollow Knight isn't that much for you, but it's just in a way of replayability, and there are just so many ways in which you can explore Hollow Knight's world, and Hollow Knight's world is huge, it's enormous, that I can't really compare the two, because this is another category in which, at least for me, Hollow Knight easily takes the cake, which is also due to me loving the map system so much. It lets you pinpoint stuff, it doesn't fill out gradually, which I really dislike in Metroidvanias, because, I don't dislike it, but I think it's a bit boring, because I think Metroidvanias are so much about exploration, and then by giving you this map and filling it out, it doesn't really make you feel like you're exploring the world, it just makes you feel like you're running through it, because you don't have to keep track of where you are, because you can look at the map at any point in time and you'll know exactly where you are. So it doesn't make you feel like you're going through an uncharted land, through uncharted territory. It just kind of is a bumper on the atmosphere for me. So Hollow Knight does that very well, and I don't think I have anything more to add other than exploration in Ori is made quite easy, which is, at some point it is nice to just have everything on the map and be able to just complete the game without having to run through the entire map thrice only to look up the last missing secret online. But yeah, I played Ori pretty much blind and completed it in under 9 hours, 100%, while in Hollow Knight I think it took me 50 hours to get to 100%, which, but I have to add, this is also due to the fact that when I play such a game as Hollow Knight for the first time, where exploration is on the forefront, I played very slowly. Ori and the Blind Forest, I didn't play it that slowly because I don't have to remember the surroundings as much as in Hollow Knight. And in Hollow Knight, I took in my surroundings much more, just because I had to get the hints, and I really liked that because it made me feel like I was at a disadvantage, and I had to get my advantage by being thoughtful, by walking around with open eyes. And yeah, this is why Hollow Knight also gets this point and wins this battle, if you want to call it that. 3.5 to 1.5. Yeah, you can leave your opinions in the comments below, which game you prefer. I basically feel like Hollow Knight is... It sounds tough when I say it's by far the better game, because Hollow Knight is one of 3 games in the entire universe, if you want to call it that I would award 10 out of 10 points, but that doesn't mean that Ori is a bad game at all. Ori for me is a 8.5 out of 10, which for me is a huge score, because I don't give away points like IGN and just call everything a 9 if it is somewhat good. Ori is really great. It's really, really great. So if you haven't played it, go play it right now and then come back to play the sequel, because I think the sequel is going to be even better. And I also have high hopes for the Hollow Knight sequel. And yeah, they're both two great series, and I love them so much. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you leave your opinions in the comments and also join the Discord and maybe check out my Patreon and stuff. But this is it for me now, and we're going to see each other hopefully in a few days or weeks. Bye!